Hello students and welcome to another video. I'm your teacher Mr. Flynn, and today we're going to be talking about macromolecules. Macro simply means large. So these are large or big molecules. So molecules, when we typically think of them, we think of like H2O, we think of CO2, carbon dioxide, water, and there's these small molecules that we've been talking about in previous units. But now we're going to be talking about really large molecules that provide different purposes within the body, and they do different things. And there's 5 main classifications that you need to be familiar with and know some examples of. All right. Okay, and these are all considered organic. Okay, and when it says organic, what we're really referring to is it contains carbon, okay, and it comes from life. Like, you're not going to see these molecules out in nature just not part of a living thing. You won't just walk around and find a carbohydrate. Okay, carbohydrates are created by living things. They don't exist outside of life creating them, if that makes sense. Like, if there's a volcanic eruption and you're going around trying to find any of these alone by themselves, they won't exist. Okay, a living organism has to create these and manufacture them. Okay, all right, and then a compound is just multiple atoms. So these are organic, meaning they're contain carbon, and they are made from living things, and they have different purposes within the body. Okay, now let me back up and erase some of this. We're going to focus in on each of these, all right, and as I go through them, I'm going to give you examples down below, their purposes, and the elements that are found within them. Okay, so let's start with carbohydrates. So carbohydrates, all right, you need to understand that carbohydrates and all the others have building blocks. So the main building block, okay, is monosaccharides. Okay, this monomer unit is basically emphasizing that this is the basic building block of carbohydrates. So monosaccharides, when they come together and they have 2 of them that come together, we now have disaccharides. Okay, so you see how there's 2 of them here? All right. And then when there's many, that's what poly means. Polysaccharides, you're going to see a chain of them connected like this. All right. So the idea, I'll erase some of this, all right, is that I've highlighted in purple all of the monomer units that build up the organic compound that we're looking at, some carbohydrates. So examples of carbohydrates are sugars, bread, and pasta, and their purpose is to store energy, provide structure, and function. We'll find them on the outside of cells, like in their membrane, but primarily we think of carbohydrates as a source of energy. Okay, your body doesn't create carbohydrates, but it obtains it through eating foods. All right, so you will gather carbohydrates and you can use them as fuel. All right, that's basically its primary purpose. All right, so of any of these, it's mostly to store energy and use that energy. Okay, it's your body's primary source of energy consumption. And it's composed of carbons, hydrogens, and oxygen. Now, if you look across here at the other ones, you'll see that there's a pattern. They all contain CH and O, CHO, CHO, CHO. All right. Only 2 of them have extras, like the proteins and nucleic acids. They contain nitrogens and nitrogen and phosphorus. Okay. So the idea is that there's cho, chon, and chomp. That's kind of how people remember which one is which. Just remember chomp. CHONP. And it's got to be one of those 5. Okay. Back up here. Okay. All right. Now we're going to focus on lipids. Okay. Lipids, or other known as triglycerides. Okay. They are composed of 2 pieces. We have the fatty acid chains, which are on the back end, and then we have this glycerol, which is at the head. All right. And they're composed of 2 parts. Okay. Now, common examples of lipids, or you could say fats, okay, are oil, butter, and like animal fat. Okay, you can even say animal fats. All right. Their primary storage is, their primary purpose is to store energy for long-term use. All right. If you eat tons and tons of carbohydrates, they turn into long-term storage. All right. Like if you eat a lot of candy on Halloween, which we just had, or even Thanksgiving, which is coming up, you will be consuming large amounts of food. And if your body can't use all of that carbohydrate, it'll actually turn it into fat, and it'll be long-term storage. Okay. Lipids are also used as barriers. They are basically primarily make up the plasma membrane of cells. And so we'll talk about this later in the year, but just remember that oil, butter, and fats are our examples. They store energy long-term, and they form barriers within the body. Okay? And they are also, like our carbohydrates, CHO, this carbons, hydrogens, and oxygens. I'm not expecting you to memorize all the shapes and what it looks like. This is just an example of what it looks like, or actually, lipids come in different varieties, but this is the primary variety that you're going to see in the body when it comes to storage. I'm not expecting you to memorize these chains or this glycerol. Okay, all I need you to know is that it's made up of carbons, hydrogens, and oxygen. Okay, and because they're both used for energy, just remember that carbohydrates and lipids are kind of connected in the sense that they're both used for energy, and they both have CH and O. So this will take a little bit of memorization to help piece this together. Okay. All right. Of the main three big ones, carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins. Let me just back up. I'll just erase all this. Is proteins. Okay. Carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins are the ones that you see on nutrition labels. That's why I say last one. We do have nucleic acids and ATP. We'll talk about those in a moment. But the big ones that you see on your food labels are carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins. Now, proteins perform all kinds of functions within the body, and they are built of amino acids. And there's a variety of amino acids. There's not just one type. Okay, and they make these chains, and these chains can get folded into make three-dimensional structures, and they perform very specific tasks. All right, and examples of protein are meats, eggs, and cheese. All right, that's good sources of protein. My wife, when she's growing up, her favorite foods were carbohydrates. And her mom would always remind her and say, hey, you need to eat protein with your carbohydrates. You need to have a balanced meal. Her mom is a doctor, nurse practitioner, so she kept reminding her to eat protein because proteins are the substances that are the building blocks of like your entire body. Like your hair is made up of proteins. Your fingernails are made of proteins, right? You need to have these amino acids that you get from meats, eggs, and cheese in order to function properly within your body. They are essential. You have to go and your body can't make amino acids. You have to get them outside through another source. Okay, and their purpose is transportation for reactions. When we say reactions, what we're really saying is enzymes. All right, they are built for structure, and they control cell growth. Now, proteins have CH and O. They have carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, but now they've included a nitrogen in there. Okay, so there's nitrogen and then CHO. So they're CHONs. All right, so these are the three that you'll see on nutrition labels because they can all be used for energy. Your body's first use for energy is carbohydrates. It then goes to lipids, and if there's not carbohydrates or lipids, you're at basically starvation levels. Your proteins can also be used for fuel and energy, but proteins aren't typically used for that. The body doesn't like to break down protein for energy, and if it has to break down protein for energy, it's not very efficient. So that's why they show those three on the back of nutrition labels. All right, the last one of the big four, all right, is nucleic acids. Okay, now nucleic acids are the coding for all of your cells' functions. Okay, it's found in the nucleus, and we'll talk about where the nucleus is later. But the idea is that this is like our DNA and RNA is code. It's like the zeros and ones within a computer, right? It's that binary coding, but RNA and DNA has a little bit different from that, but it's similar to it, okay? And it's built up by nucleotides, okay? And it's in all living things. Every single living thing, every cell has DNA or RNA in it. So we don't necessarily include it on a food label, okay? And it stores and communicates genetic information, all right? And it has all 5 of the elements. So C, H, O, N, and P. If it's storing the information, it's also going to have this phosphorus and nitrogen included. Okay. Now, the currency inside the cell is ATP. Okay. And when I say currency, what I'm talking about is energy currency. My bad. So when energy is transferred within the body and it's like packaged like in a battery, like if you think of it like this, if you have a battery, you can put it into, I don't know, a toy, and then you can operate that toy because that battery is giving power to it. ATP is like a battery. ATP is like a battery. It stores the energy and it can be used for different purposes throughout the body. All right, and it's composed of the nucleotides and phosphate groups. And ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. So tri means 3, and then phosphate has 3 of these phosphates here on this section. We'll spend a whole unit talking about this, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but the idea is that this carries energy through the body. So let me just write it carries energy. All right. It is responsible for powering different functions within the body. Okay? All right. That's all for this video. There's a lot in here, but look at this image and become familiar with the terms. If you're hearing saccharides, you're thinking of a carbohydrates. If you're working with triglycerides or fatty acids or glycerols, we're working with lipids. If you hear the term amino acids, we are working with proteins. And if you hear nucleotides, you're working with nucleic acids. Okay? I know there's 2 nucleotides here. Don't let that confuse you, all right? But when you hear nucleotide, I want you to associate it with nucleic acids, okay? Don't necessarily associate it with high-energy compounds. I'm going to simplify it for you, okay? I'm not going to get into the details of this in the rest of the year. So all I really want you to know about ATP is that it carries energy, and that's about it, okay? And how that breakage happens and how ATP transfers energy, we will spend time talking about that later. But when you hear the term nucleotide, refer to nucleic acids, okay? And then be familiar with all these examples of where we find these in nature and what their purposes are. Those are the kinds of questions you'll have in your test. The Amoeba Sisters, they have a video. It's on my resources. They have a great video on this. So it's a nice review. Now that you've had some working understanding, that video will make more sense for you, okay? Thanks again for watching. Till next time.